This is AEDT 2150U, Digital Technologies and Advanced Teaching Methods. The title for this particular video clip is Connectivist Theory. If you are old enough to remember the pre-internet era, you witnessed many changes in terms of how much we needed to know in order to function in society, about the schooling system, about people changing careers many times in their lives, about industries closing down in many parts of our country, which opened up a new way of seeing things, the lifelong learning paradigm. Those who rose to the opportunity engaged in many informal learning situations, which helped them develop skills and competencies to make them employable. Many people were spending more and more time working over the internet, making contacts, or even better, connecting themselves to new elements of information and to new people. Meanwhile, the logic of knowledge was changing, and most people didn't see it coming. This was the premise of connectivism. The analysis questions for this particular video clip are as follows. What is connectivism or connective knowledge? What are the underlying principles? How can one learn in a network? And explain the role of interpretation in connectivism. Knowledge is of two kinds. We know a subject ourselves, or we know where we can find the information on it. This is a quote by Samuel Johnson. While this quote might seem self-explanatory, it is of significant importance for anybody who wants to teach or design learning programs. It points out the difference between memorizing lessons on a subject or knowing where to find the information on a subject. One must admit that basic knowledge is important, but that basic knowledge is not the same in both cases. In the first case, the learner would simply have to memorize elements of information and know how to answer the question correctly when asked. In the second case, the learner would have to know how to find the information, and that means where to look for the information and who to speak to in order to answer questions, and chances are the answers to these questions would be much more complex and include tasks to accomplish and problems to solve. This is what we call also distributed knowledge. The first case is usually what we face in school, and the latter case is usually what we are faced with in the real life, although both types of knowledge are not mutually exclusive. At the end of the day, if we want to perform well in a job, we must know the subject matter, that is the object of our work, and we must also know how to find more information on it, and when new situations arise, how the logic of information changes. Let's look at this connective knowledge theory in more details. George Siemens describes connectivism as the integration of principles explored by chaos, network and complexity, and self-organization theories. Learning is a process that occurs within nebulous environments of shifting core elements, not entirely under the control of the individual. For a connectivist, learning is defined as actionable knowledge and can reside outside of ourselves, within, for example, an organization or a database. It is focused on connecting specialized information sets, and the connections that enable us to learn more are more important than the current state of knowing. George Siemens also claims that connectivism is driven by the understanding that decisions are based on rapidly altering foundations. New information is continually being acquired. The ability to draw distinctions between important and unimportant information is vital. The ability to recognize when new information alters the landscape based on decision made yesterday is also of critical importance. Here are the 8 principles of connectivism. The first principle, learning and knowledge rests in diversity of opinions. The second principle, learning is a process of connecting specialized nodes of information or information sources. The third principle is that learning may reside in non-human appliances, and that's a strange phenomenon for some people. The fourth principle is that capacity to know more is more important or more critical than what is currently known. The fifth principle is that nurturing and maintaining connections is needed to facilitate continual learning. The sixth principle is that the ability to see connections between fields, ideas, and concepts is a core skill. The seventh principle is that currency, which means accurate, up-to-date knowledge, is the intent of all connectivist learning activities. And the eighth principle is that decision-making is in itself a learning process. Choosing what to learn and the meaning of incoming information is seen through the lens of a shifting reality. While there is a right answer now, it may be wrong tomorrow due to alterations in the information climate affecting the decision. A network is a system composed by nodes and connections between the nodes. The nodes can be directly or indirectly connected to another node. The nodes are elements of information, and the connections are ways for that information to flow inside the system. Think of a brain with the neurons and the dendrites. The dendrites is what we commonly call connections between the neurons. A network works in a similar way. Inside the system, there has to be data, and this is small units of raw elements. There also has to be information, and that is data with intelligence applied. There is also knowledge, and that is information and context. And there has to be meaning, that is knowledge understood in all of its nuances or implications. So what do we find in networks? Well, we learn in networks because the system is in constant evolution. Some things change rapidly, and some things change slowly. We find a variety of items in a network, such as content, which is data or information. We also find interaction, and that is tentative connection forming. There are some static nodes, and this is stable knowledge structures or structures that do not change as easily. There are dynamic nodes, and these are continually changing nodes based on new information and data. There are also some self-updating nodes, and these are nodes which are tightly linked to their information source of origin, and that results in a high level of currency. For example, up-to-date information is an example of self-updating nodes. There are also emotive elements, and these are the emotions that influence the prospect of connections and hub formations. Here are a few concepts to think about: interpretation and emergence. All of this learning is subject to the interpretation of the learner, or how the learner construes his or her understanding of the system. The presence of new nodes does not guarantee that they will be understood. Neither does it ensure that there will be any learning, because we cannot know for sure if the node has been connected or how it has been connected. However, when new connections arise, the node is encoded by how it is connected to other elements of the network. This is how the learner comes to understand its meaning. And yet, that meaning can change depending on the situation, on the nature of the system, and on how learners organize the system. This has an impact on how they know the world. Whatever action or interaction occurs inside the system creates the emergence of a phenomenon. According to Stephen Downes, in an article titled An Introduction to Connective Knowledge that was published in 2006, emergence is the result of interpretation. As Downes describes it, emergence is interpretation applied to connections. And we can see this in two ways. We can perceive a set of connections linking a group of entities as a whole. Downes gives the examples of dominoes. When one domino topples another and so on, and we look at them in a distance, we notice that there is a wave that is created. This is an emergent phenomenon. It is not the dominoes themselves that create the wave, but the interaction between the dominoes. Same for the interaction between two moires. When one moire is put on top of the other, there is a spider pattern that is created. The spider is not really there, but it appears from the interaction between the two moires. We can also perceive something as a distinct whole and interpret it as connections. For example, when we see someone on TV, we can say that we're looking at pixels that are being triggered by a mechanism of video broadcasting, and the image we see has a link with the object of origin, and in that case it is the actor himself. Sometimes even we can develop shared meanings when people in a system learn to view the nodes and the connections between the nodes in a certain way, such as in a community of practice. The synthesis questions for this video clip are the following. What do you think are the challenges in applying the principles of connectivism in learning programs? While networks are simple, they are composed of complex elements. What is complex about them? Why is it like that? And finally, explain how inference, emergence, and the development of shared meanings are concepts that refer to learning.